I'm Alicia.
And I'm Maddie.
And welcome to the Fangirl Diaries, a podcast where we talk about our obsessions,
Reminisce about our teen icons,
and explore the books, movies, and shows that made us the incredibly nerdy 30-somethings that we now are. Hello!
Hey!
We are doing something a bit different today, in that notably absent from this episode is anything fantastical, supernatural.
No vampires.
Alas.
No
maybe
witches.
Maybe we should change topic. Let's just abandon what we had planned to do and go back to our usual sort of material. We are going to have a nostalgic look at a TV show that we loved as teenagers.
Yeah.
As did most of the population. But that is a little bit outside of our fantasy and sci-fi space.
It's more similar to when we early on we did a Gossip Girl episode. It's more in that vein than anything else that we've done.
In fact, it is exactly in that vein. It is the famous precursor to Gossip Girl. We're doing The OC.
Yay!
California. It's like, are you going to carry on, man? Oh my gosh. It's just, whenever that soundtrack plays, it just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I think this is my comfort show.
Oh.
Which is, I know, is very different from you talked about Supernatural as your comfort show.
Our difference in personalities.
Could not be more different. But whenever I put on the OC, I genuinely feel quite held. Do you know what I mean? No, I think it must be more the nostalgia effect than, because like any of these things, I always remember it being even more quality than it necessarily actually is. But
also that's because when you look back at things, they're from a different era, and so you're kind of viewing them through a different era's lens. But I think at the time, the OC really was quality. Lots of people really loved it.
It is still quality, but I'm thinking, why do I love it so much? And it must just be that it really takes me back to being like 14 and watching it for the first time and thinking, this is something so nostalgic. This is more than 20 years old, we should say, which is quite frightening that the OC premiered in 2003, we have noticed, to our complete horror. It's now 2024. And I feel like this is the other day. Like, Maddie has just pulled out of a box from somewhere in her house the complete multi-disc DVD box set.
It was in a beautiful like presentation box which had like descriptions of every episode, and you like flicked through this booklet to get to each disc, and with like illustrations and like photos of all the cast and all the episodes. It's like absolutely gorgeous.
Had behind the scenes discs and like special edition stuff. I had all the box sets separately when they were released each time, which was a fool's errand because it turns out I should have waited for the 4-season box set.
Well, between us, we've got it covered.
But this came out when we were teenagers, but we were discussing earlier that because we were watching television in the UK, a lot of these American shows got to us maybe a year or two late.
Yeah. We were waiting until it was on like terrestrial UK TV to watch it, and we were watching it week by week as it came out.
Yeah, that's right. And it meant that there was a terrible risk of genuine spoilers.
Oh, yeah.
Like you remembered earlier that we all knew Marissa died.
Yeah.
Like, we should say... Sorry.
We're assuming...
I'm really sorry, but we're assuming that everybody listening to this has watched the complete 4 seasons of The OC. If you haven't, I'm really sorry.
Also, it's a 20-year-old show. Spoilers don't count.
Okay, fine. But just on the off chance that you are beginning The OC for the first time, well done you. Like, great decision. But also, yes, please be aware there are spoilers. Maybe I was joking about Marissa. Like, you don't know. Maybe who knows? Who knows? Anyway, we were watching this at a time when it was very easy for somebody to accidentally tell you what was going on.
Yeah,
and this show actually was pre-hyped, I think, for us and maybe everybody in the UK by like 1 or 2 select individuals who either had the kind of television setup that meant they had American channels, or were just able to watch this in time with the US. So for me, that was a mirror.
How that would have been. Maybe they were like pirating it.
I don't know, but I really, really distinctly remember Amira being into this show.
Yeah.
And everybody else wondering what this was that was going to, like, the hype around it was there while we were in school. And it had filtered into things like clothing and people fancying this guy called Ben McKenzie or Adam Brody, and these names were starting to be bandied around. And so when it finally did reach a television channel that, like, you and I had, I feel like a lot of people sat down to watch this.
Was it E4?
I feel like it maybe Channel 4 picked it up and then it went to E4 or something like that. It definitely was on UK television.
Yeah.
But as we've sort of said before, for anyone who's maybe listening to this and is Gen Z and requires this kind of like explanation from the Dark Ages, this was appointment television.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? This was once a week, almost every week. These were the kind of American serialized dramas that quite literally had a season of 24 or something episodes.
And it was probably one of the earlier ones of those like really long American TV shows that we watched that like literally, I mean, UK shows that I used to watch and enjoy with my family were often like 6 episodes, 8 episodes, maybe 10.
The BBC.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And these like American shows started like coming over to the UK that were like 24 episodes, and they spanned the whole year. They would take breaks. They didn't just like run 24 weeks in a row.
Nope.
There'd be like a Christmas break and then like an Easter break. And so they were covering the whole year.
Well, we talked about this in our Gossip Girl episode, that it meant the experience was that you were supposedly following the year with the characters in the drama.
Yeah.
So, and normally these are high school shows that meant you lived out in one season, junior year, then senior year, etc., etc. And they had things like a Christmas episode, or we're going to talk about Chrismukkah.
Yeah.
You had the New Year's episode. You had there was real seasonality to the drama that then Gossip Girl goes on to do as well. Yeah. But we already mentioned that it meant that occasionally we were watching like their Christmas episode in June.
Yes, because we got it like months later.
We got it months later. So there was always a real confusion about the sort of seasonality. But no, it meant that the OC ran from 2003 to 2007. Mm-hmm. So a season a year, 4 seasons. And then it was done.
And what made it different then to something like Gossip Girl?
Well, we should say in chronological order how this specifically predates Gossip Girl, because this was the show that launched Josh Schwartz. And I'm saying this very carefully because I do realise that in the Gossip Girl episode, I called him Stephen Schwartz.
Someone else.
That is the guy who co-wrote Wicked. So it's very different. So anyone discerning who listened to that Gossip Girl episode must have been like, what? What's she saying? No, so Josh Schwartz developed the OC when he was something like incredibly young, like in his 20s or something, and then went straight from the OC into Gossip Girl. Mm-hmm. So Gossip Girl was quite literally kind of the OC Mark II, the second Josh Schwartz big project, and very much built on the foundation the OC had laid. But to my mind, the OC was the big new thing that then produced. Like, we were primed for Gossip Girl because we had format, the OC.
Yeah. And there were other things around at the time. I mentioned that I watched quite a lot of One Tree Hill, which was probably around a similar era. There were things like 90210 before that. They were these shows that were sort of designed for teenagers, but also kind of set within those teenage families. So you were following like the parents' social circle as well as the teenagers' social circle. And yeah, as you said, through high school, junior, senior year, they kind of follow a similar kind of format.
I couldn't remember, because I didn't watch One Tree Hill or 90210. I watched the kind of reboot of it later, but at the time of the OC, it felt like the first time I was experiencing that like pure kind of Americana serialized family drama. Yeah. Or that high school drama in that exact distilled format that then's been replicated.
And One Tree Hill may have been slightly later, I can't quite remember. But it's definitely a similar kind of era.
I feel like people got so wedded to their particular show.
Yeah.
Because you really did. It was a year of your life.
Yeah.
You really followed these characters that now in adulthood, you really find people who watched this one or that one, and whatever it was, they watched all of it.
Yeah, or Gilmore Girls.
Or have watched it on repeat, or really have got an allegiance to this particular thing. Although, if you have not watched the OC, apart from the fact that there's now no point because I've majorly spoiled it, it is one of the ones that I would recommend that anyone start. Because it is quality.
Why don't you describe the concept then?
Oh God. Okay, so here's a summary that I have not planned. So, okay, the OC is a teen drama set in Orange County, which is like an incredibly wealthy part of California. And it follows the Cohen family, who have kind of adopted a 17-year-old called Ryan Atwood. And Ryan comes from like a dangerous neighborhood in California. He was involved in crime and car stealing and all that sort of stuff. Explaining any of these programs sounds mad, so you gotta bear with me. And the very wealthy Cohen family take him in, which means that he becomes a sort of adopted brother / best friend to the absolute scene stealer that is Adam Brody's character, Seth Cohen.
Yeah.
But as you just intimated, it is about them and their peer group. So they happen to live next door to absolutely beautiful girl next door, Marissa Cooper, who is kind of the typical teenage lead. She's the female lead. But it also follows the parent generation in real detail.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't think I'd seen done.
Yeah, it makes you really care about them as well.
Yeah. Like when you're just talking about what was before this, I mean, we have since gone back and watched and enjoyed something like My So-Called Life. But we didn't experience at the time. We would have been about 3 years old in the 90s.
Yeah, it was very young, yeah.
And that seemed to follow a similar format before it was like tragically cancelled. But otherwise, like things that featured teenagers that I had watched before that was sort of in the like tween space.
Yeah, so, like Disney Channel-esque before Disney Channel.
Yeah, or even some of that content was being shown in the UK.
Kind of,
yeah, things like you know, like the great things that had both parent and children stuff in it was like My Parents Are Aliens.
Yeah,
That is a niche reference to anyone in the UK that really loved that show. It's like in the late 90s, early noughties. Or even high school drama or high school set things, but that were actually for children, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Or, you know, these kind of 90s shows that there was an interest in her aunts. Yeah. But otherwise, I'm trying to think.
And it's more being pitched at like 10 to 13-year-olds than it was kind of later teens and adults.
Yes. The OC was the first show that I remember watching that was that classic high school drama that had the parent generation and that crucially did not have any supernatural element to it, because the only thing before that I followed, like, you know, my sort of allegiance to my favourite TV show of all time was Buffy. And that very much had a high school and then college setting.
Yeah.
But really very little interest in that multi-generational storytelling, apart from like Giles. But even he is seen as sort of the
outsider.
Yeah, like the odd anomalous parent figure that they all look up to.
Yeah.
But in the OC, there are storylines and entire scenes that don't feature the younger cast members. It genuinely lets people like Sandy and Kirsten like have their own like material.
And because of that, like we watched it with our families and like our mums loved it and loved Sandy and, you know, really got into the whole storyline. And it became something, at least with me and my mum, it definitely became something that we could like watch together and talk about and bond over. And it was, as you said, a kind of cozy show in a way, because it brings back that kind of family time. And it's really nice.
I was so torn between this when I was like thinking about it earlier, because in some ways, it is exactly that. Rewatching it, there are some real comforting family moments in that show. Like, fundamentally, the Coens are just the most, like, loving collective. And also there's, like, real stuff about friendship and all this. And it did feel like a show that was in a sort of safe enough space that some families watched it. Like, you know, parents would be, like, passing through the room with the TV on, but would loiter.
Yeah, they wouldn't generally like be offended by anything on it or think it was like, you know, it was generally designed to be kind of, watched by anyone.
And yet, when you go back through it, it's got like substance abuse, self-harm, crime, people going to rehab, sort of adultery scandals, like all this sort of stuff.
But it's almost like all of those things happened, and yet it still felt cozy and safe. Yes. It's like, how did they manage that? It was like all of these terrible things would happen, and yet you still felt, oh, well, the OC's quite a nice place. These are all quite nice people.
Is that because Sandy Cohen survives all 4 seasons?
Yeah,
and you just think, oh, it's fine.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be fine. Sandy's going to save the day. He'll lawyer the way out of there. Yeah. He'll have some like clever lawyer trick up his sleeve.
I think that dichotomy is kind of quite it's made very early on when you have Ryan coming in as this like. He's meant to be this, like, hard guy who's from the rough neighbourhood, from, like, you know...
Chino.
He's, like, he's got crime on his, like, record, and he's like, this is his last hope, is to be looked after by this insanely wealthy family. And yet, he as a character, he's so not hard. Like, he's not cool. He's, like, a bit lame, but in, like, a sweet and nice way. He's not dangerous, really. Like, they show him, like... Occasionally he'll like fight someone and whatever, but as a character, his actual personality is just quite nice. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of like, they try to be edgy, but overall it's not an edgy show, even when it's dealing with like harder topics.
Yeah, I think similar to Gossip Girl, the show starts with the, in this case, entry of Ryan or the re-entry of Serena back from... And in both cases, they're treated as these kind of troubled, difficult. And we talked about how Serena actually just seems really lovely. Yeah. Everyone treats her like she's this real problem child. But it doesn't really seem that way. And the way that everybody in Newport Beach reacts to Ryan... You would think he's this kind of social outcast. But actually, you're right, he occasionally punches someone... There was an incident with a car. Yeah. But otherwise...
he's quite a normal guy.
he's pretty gentle. Yeah. Pretty gentle. But the show really hinges on the romantic interest between him and Marissa Cooper. Mm-hmm. And then the various love interests of Seth Cohen. And all of this, we'll get into this a little bit later. But it was incredibly popular and I think captivating for... the aspirational aspect of the show, which I don't think we can overlook because this show is about rich people. Yeah. Like fundamentally. It's about thematically all of those things that I just, the list of sort of problems and dramas that I listed. But if you set that, I don't know, in like down and out parts of New York City, you'd be talking about something like Rent. Whereas this is not that. This is lots and lots of challenging human drama but set against incredible mega mansions and people with Chanel handbags. Yeah,
the way that they solve their problems is by paying for very expensive therapy or whatever. It's not by, they never really are going to get into like serious trouble. Even, well, I suppose they do, but they... Yeah, they have a support system and the financial system, an ability to kind of, look after each other.
Yeah, that's right. The sense of threat never actually feels that high, which is why I think the show feels very safe. That even when people do, when there are cars crashed or houses burnt down or at one, in some episodes, someone shot famously, really the worst that happens to a character is like, I think at one point the worst that, Marissa has to move school. Yeah. You sort of think, oh no, she's had to go to the less good school in the area. Oh no. Or like someone doesn't get into an Ivy League school. Oh yeah. No, that's a big one. That's a big one. So yeah, the threat level is never normally kind of that high. But the school they do go to, Harbour, I remember watching this and I wonder if it was super tantalising to especially maybe a British audience, because this was like the vision to me of what I thought like the absolute best version of an American high school looked like.
Yeah, and American high schools are, or at least the perception of them in media, are just wildly different to British high schools.
Completely different. Yeah. Completely different. But this was that to the max. Like they were all in, obviously they're all wearing their own clothes. We should say the British system is very much that you're all in very strict uniform. Yeah. They were all in their own clothes, which meant that, we'll get into talking about the fashion, but also the way that school was laid out was like this kind of, it had Californian, like there was kind of a quad, and there was like the little archways where they all met, And there's a part when, I think it's when they're in senior year, where their version of their like common room, their sort of recreation space, looks like something that's like genuinely better than a cafe or a sort of...
I was going to say, it looks to us more like a university style setup than a school.
Definitely. And I think that was what was appealing about it, that we thought we'd gone into this magical land when we were in our equivalent of senior year, and it meant that like we could get a cookie at break time.
Yeah.
and like a cup of squash. Yeah. It was like utterly rubbish. Yeah. But they had things like a coffee machine and like they were getting iced coffees on the veranda. And I was like, what school is this?
Did we actually ever see them doing like lessons?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, we do. And there is some, they use that sometimes for some of the narrative. So Ryan, of course, it turns out, is actually relatively academic. He has academic promise.
Right.
So he gets into that school. And it turns out that he had just neglected his kind of academic abilities because his environment wasn't up to kind of allowing him to blossom. I actually think that there's probably, in retrospect, a lot wrong with this show. Just even as I'm talking, like, God knows if, like, Chino must be a real place. The show really suggests that people only flourish in strong socioeconomic environments, which is probably a really problematic narrative.
And I guess what they were trying to aim for was like the kind of clash of cultures, and you see this alien wealthy environment from the eyes of somebody who doesn't understand it and who's grown up very differently. So you're trying to get that clash of cultures. But yeah, Ryan's not actually that different to any of them, which maybe that's a good thing. But
that's definitely right. The polarity is not quite as extreme, and a lot of the characters that you can sympathise with or that are like hugely empathetic in the drama are in that wealth bracket. Like, are those kind of main characters. Unlike, you really do need the Humphrey family in Gossip Girl to get you into the whole swing of the Upper East Side, because a lot of them are hateful.
You can't really relate to any of them as like real people. Whereas in the OC, the parents, the kids, all of them are quite relatable and nice and normal, even though they are extremely wealthy.
Yeah, the people who are pitched as kind of the baddies or the antagonists are never really more than just, mothers and daughters that have poor communication skills. Or a billionaire who's not really able to talk to teenagers in the right way.
Or they're like side characters that come in and kind of cause chaos for a few episodes and are like, but then don't really last as characters.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have one or two actual, like we were just rewatching stuff with, I love the plot line with Oliver. And he's like genuinely a bit of a psychopath. So there are some bits where you think, oh gosh, this perfect society has been kind of infiltrated by some genuine scary people, but otherwise, no. So we have to think, I reckon, about our kind of like key storylines and characters. Why were you watching this show, Maddie? Like, who were you drawn to? What kept your interest in this show?
Oh, it was all about Seth Cohen.
All about Seth Cohen, yes.
Obviously. He was just like actually hilarious, and also like they made out, it was one of the characters like made out to be a nerd but actually is quite cute, and I guess they did embrace that. Like he had girls all over him the whole time, even though he was meant to be really nerdy, and he was just like kind of magnetically attractive because he was funny and quirky and said different things to what everyone else was saying, and just you said it, he's a scene stealer. The actor is just like, he's fantastic and just really rides on like just keeping the energy going in any scene that he's in.
This show for me literally works because of Adam Brody. And he's so good in that role. I think he did a lot of improv. Like I'm sure they wrote scripts for him and then were just like, let's just let him work.
Say what you like.
Let him do his thing, it's fine. A little bit like how we spoke about the work like Johnny Depp was doing in Pirates of the Caribbean. And you think at one point all the people working on that film just went like, let's just let him do his thing. It's gonna work, it's good.
Be all right.
Let's just let him do his thing. That Adam Brody was allowed to really kind of define that role in a way that it looks like Dan Humphrey is kind of set up as that character in Gossip Girl, but never really has the physical or verbal comedy that Adam Brody brings to Seth. And he almost has a David Schwimmer-esque ability for physical comedy, or for just like these moments of genuine humour.
Yeah.
And he manages to capture that, the nerd who also has sex appeal.
Yeah. He's funny, he's cute, he's got like the kind of silly and fun expressions as well, the way that he like uses his face. He's just, he's very magnetic.
Yeah, and you're right, the number of women that end up falling for Seth, us included.
Of course.
That it became a sort of cultural this or that game to play as to whether you were a Ryan fan or a Seth fan. And this predated things like Team Edward, Team Jacob. This was one of the first. There was 2 genuine potential like teen hotties in this show.
Yeah.
But it really did divide the teenage girl population.
And I can see why people liked Ryan as well.
Oh, for sure.
Like, an attractive guy and, as we've said, kind of hard but also sweet underneath. And I can totally see that. But really, it was not Ryan, was it?
No, and that's an odd choice for you and I, because we spoke about in that when it's Teen Dean or Team Sam in Supernatural, you and I hands down Team Dean. What am I saying? Team Dean. Because he's like the bad boy and all this. You would think we would like Ryan.
Yeah, but that's because Ryan is not the bad boy.
He's not, is he? He's
not really a bad boy. He's just a softie. So he doesn't fall into the right category for us.
I wondered whether he was just a more mature taste that when I rewatch it, as I just frequently do because I adore this show, that like in older years I would find Ryan more attractive, and that maybe Seth is so palatable to like a 14-year-old. Yeah, he's a little bit more childlike.
Yeah.
Whereas Ryan is set up to be like, the harder, more dangerous one. But no, I just still love Seth. Every time we watch it, I'm like, it's just still great. Definitely Seth, 100%. Except maybe the brain starts to consider Sandy Cohen.
Of course.
But that's just a product of our age. I'm now watching this show like, oh, look, Jimmy looks quite good there. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Oh, my God.
Well, to be fair, my mum definitely had a massive crush on Sandy Cohen. And it's completely reasonable.
Yep, for sure. But there was some of the key storylines in this were genuinely dramatic. There were genuine twists. There was the huge spoiler that I've already announced that was like basically a cultural phenomenon at that time. Like the fact that the show took the direction that, actually, you know what? I've said it. We can just talk about it now. Do you think it worked for the show that they killed off Marissa?
I mean, no. The last season is just without Marissa. It just kind of went off on some kind of random tangent and tried to make you care about a whole load of different characters that you didn't care about. And I mean, it's a classic example of that they had a really, really good thing going and then just couldn't keep it up once something kind of fundamental has changed about the cast. Yeah, the show couldn't sustain the little core 4 that they had going on with one piece of that quartet missing. It wasn't enough. Even Adam Brody couldn't carry it just on his own. It still had Rachel Bilson, who's brilliant, and Ben McKenzie stayed in it, but you couldn't quite muster, after 3 seasons of Ryan and Marissa, the kind of epic love story of the show, to care about Taylor. No. Maybe some people do. I'm sure that relationship has its fans, but I couldn't. Well, also, it's not just that it was a new love interest, it's that the 4 of them, they were the core of the show. They were the 4 friends in whatever pairing they were in. They could kind of play off each other. There weren't any pairs of them that didn't interact well. And so they were like a nice 4 that you could create different scenes with. And then you kind of break that when you take one of them completely away, and then you're trying to deal with like the consequences of one of the 4 dying. You have to deal with like the inevitable grief and moving on, but you don't want to wallow too much in that, so you've got to find a way to move on, which is with a new relationship, and then it didn't work. Just can't work. It was hit by the double whammy of difficulties for these shows, which is that in the same season where in this doomed season 4, which is the demise of the OC, you don't have Marissa, and the show has to contend with the ultimate challenge of teen drama, which is that this is the year when they've supposedly gone to college. Disaster. We talked about this in Gossip Girl. Very few shows survive this. Like Gossip Girl was never really the same once they went to college.
I will defend the fact that I think Buffy survives that transition and does another 4 seasons after that. But really, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard when it felt like Harbour was the social nexus of all the first 3 seasons, and that even a lot of the teenage drama was happening in the Cohen residence, in their house, or in the pool house.
Yeah, totally.
In the pool house. That when all the characters sort of scattered and Summer goes to Brown, the viewer feels really disorientated. Like, I never return to season 4.
No.
If I want comfort viewing, I don't put that season on.
I'm trying to think about whether there's any more recent shows that I've watched that have like managed to do this or have done something different. And the only one that I can think that I've watched recently that is set in that time period is Sex Education. And I think either they must have started it younger and therefore they've got more years of school.
Yep.
But then you've got the weirdness where you're like watching 14-year-olds talk about like sex and like whatever. Or maybe they didn't do a whole school year per season because it wasn't tied to the kind of 1 season a year model. It could come out whenever. They could have multiple seasons within 1 school year and just be like, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to follow this format.
Yeah, you can extend the time frame a bit. But I think it just is still so seductive as a format to have a season be a year.
Of course, a school year. When you're a teenager, your life is kind of organised by school year.
Look,
so
100%. That's it. It's your academic year.
Yeah.
Is how you. Yeah. None of these shows went January to January.
No.
These shows all start in September and end in the summer. And if we think about as well how long these take to film, and your actors are aging, it makes sense to do that. I was watching The Summer I Turned Pretty this year and maybe a bit of last year, and it is having similar sort of growing pains, although that, like, they do have to follow what the books do, so a bit different. But it is the challenge of teen drama. What do you do when your teens are not really teens anymore? Although watching this show, isn't it one of the most noticeable things that like people like Ben McKenzie, I think, don't look 17.
No, and it's a classic where, all the teenagers look older than they are and all the parents look younger than they are. So they all look like they're only about 10 or 12 years apart in age.
Not to the extremities that Gossip Girl takes it.
Yeah.
When I think, how are these parents? Like, what age did you have these children? But at least the OC actually does talk about a lot of the parent generation make part of their storyline the fact that they were either teenage sweethearts or that they knew each other.
They had kids quite young.
Yeah, like the whole Kirsten and Jimmy drama is predicated on them having been high school sweethearts, but they're still neighbours.
And you're like, now that I'm 33, do we care about like high school sweethearts? And yet these adults care about high school sweethearts.
I start wondering what I've done wrong in life that I don't have a 17-year-old son. Like, what's happened? Where did I go wrong? Clearly this is it. And you said earlier, just to think about the whole trajectory of the OC overall, it ends with, you know what, I've already given a spoiler warning, so whatever. It ends with Seth and Summer getting married. You had a strong reaction to that when we were thinking about this earlier.
Well, it's just bizarre. When we were 15 or 16 watching this, or even younger, I guess, and the characters were meant to be 17, 18, maybe they were 19 in the last season, like, you just, like, marriage is not the end goal of relationships when you're that age. And so having marriage be the kind of happy ending for a teen drama is just bizarre to me. Like, a successful relationship when you're 19 is that you're like, you know, you go off to different universities and you still manage to keep together and you're like going really strong, like long distance and like seeing each other in the holidays. It's not that you get married. It just doesn't make any sense.
And yet this was the like pièce de résistance of the show.
Yeah.
The Seth and Summer wedding. And we noticed that it's how Gossip Girl ends too.
Yeah.
You have Chuck and Blair get married, but the final episode is the wedding of Serena and Dan.
And like all their parents are like happy about this.
Yes.
And you're like, if I had said I was getting married, even at like 20 or 21, my parents would have...
To your 16-year-old boyfriend.
Yeah. Would have been like, what?
Yeah.
No, you're not getting married. You do that in like another decade. Come on.
Maybe we're just not, like, I wonder whether our view, this probably wouldn't be shared by necessarily everyone.
No. But to us, the people that get married when they're 20 are like extremely religious people only. That's it.
Yeah, and the show has, I think Seth and Summer get married at 19, maybe. They're in their first year after school.
Yeah.
And you're right,
everybody turning up to university and being like, hey, here's my ring, I'm married.
For everyone in the show, you're spot on, it pans around. And everyone's like clapping. Everyone's like, this is great, well done. You've made wise life choices. Well done.
Oh dear.
But it really, I wonder if the show felt after the tragic end of Marissa dying, which is where I think it should have ended.
Yeah.
I know it would have felt sad to end the OC on a tragic note, but it was like, if you were going to do that, that's the end. And it actually makes it the end of childhood, the end of teenage years.
Yeah.
And there be an end. So maybe they thought if it was going to carry on, the sort of remedy...
They had to have something as like a kind of...
Something happy.
A moment.
Yeah, and it has to end with the suggestion that, you know, Ryan's life has worked out and he's now going to take an interest in, like, helping kids that, you know, similar to himself. So it manages to tie up every other character gets their happy ending, apart from Marissa.
I get the point. I guess the point is the reason that doesn't work is because you can't have a happy ending at age 19 or 20 because that's just the start of your life. But when you're a 13 or 14-year-old, maybe you do think, yes, like once I get to 19 or 20, I need to have some stuff sorted out with my life. Whereas when you're 19 or 20, you realise that you don't need to.
We're saying this now as this is our opinion as people in their mid-30s.
Yeah.
Whereas you're right, when we were watching this age 14, 19 seemed like a serious adult.
Yeah,
oh
maybe.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was a real adult stage where you were maybe doing adult things. Whereas you're right, that was not the case actually
when we got there.
19. but there we go. But I want to come back before we go into our categories to talk about the phenomenon that was this in the 2000s, because this was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Everyone was watching this, or it certainly was a big deal at our school.
I'm sure it was a big deal all over the UK and much of the US, I'm sure.
Yeah, the ratings for this on TV, the way it defined fashion. We should talk about music in a minute. It made real stars out of a lot of the cast.
Misha Barton.
Well, it was a bit of a tragic tale, isn't it? And we should say she was actually genuinely very young in it. So Ben McKenzie, I think, was in his mid-20s. Misha Barton was a teenager.
Yeah.
She was the youngest cast member. I think she was 16 or 17. So she was actually...
Playing her age,
yeah. Whereas the others weren't. And she's spoken quite openly about, like, the real challenge of that. And it sounds very
becoming
troubling.
so famous so quickly. And
yeah, becoming so famous so quickly. But also she's spoken openly about the fact that what the character of Marissa goes through, she was finding difficult to relate to because it actually felt aged up from her own age.
I mean, she is the person in the cast that has the most traumatic storylines.
Definitely.
Everything that's like a bad dramatic thing that happens with like drugs and alcohol or with like, you know, guns and, you know,
her family situations really hard.
Her family, everything. She's got the most trauma going on in her life out of the four of them in the inner circle.
Yeah. Whereas now, like, Rachel Bilson married Hayden Christensen. That's like a really big deal. Like, actually, just we have to come back to some of this because I get really nerdy about like the personal lives of these actors. But there we go. But before we go to our categories, we should talk about the cultural impact of this was enormous. It felt like real escapism that we were watching this in mostly rainy, cold England. And this was beautiful people in their bikinis, going to school.
But also the beach.
Their lives just looked inconceivable to me. That's right, like a typical day for them would be to go to their insane high school, have like an iced latte. At lunch, they might like nip out to the beach or like do some surfing.
Yeah.
And then they got to hang out in these awesome spaces.
By
Like,
the pool.
Or that awesome music venue that they all go to.
Yeah.
Like the Crab Shack or whatever it's called. Or like, I can't remember, these like really, really cool, they'd go to like little cool diners and or by the pool. That's right. In their insane houses. And these were teenagers who, like, I know this is kind of par for the course in America anyway, but like had cars. The legal driving age in the UK is higher.
Yeah.
So it looked like watching versions of ourselves who were maybe only 2 years older, like living these completely insane different lives where I thought, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you briefly mentioned the fashion as well. Like, looking back on it now, you can tell that, like, it was it's very 2000s.
So 2000s.
But at the time, it was like, it was defining. And even now I can look at it and be like, that is what we would wear. Like, those styles of clothes.
We tried.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't mean succeeded, but like, that looked like just normal clothing. But now you look back and you're like, oh, it really was like an era.
Yeah. And it's difficult to pinpoint whether the OC was putting on screen pre-existing fashion trends, or whether things became fashion trends because they were in the OC.
Probably a bit of a mixture.
I think a bit of both. It really was a pioneering, like, this was the epitome of cool.
Yeah.
What Misha Barton and Rachel Bilson were wearing on the OC was the coolest thing.
A classic was just like the absolute dead straight hair.
When we were just watching it, I thought, wow, this was the era of GHDs.
Like, literally, it was just completely flat. And that was like,
straight hair.
Now that looks really kind of like jarring, and you're a bit like, that doesn't look like natural hair. But it wasn't. Like, everyone had just absolutely completely straightened from top to bottom with no wave whatsoever. And that was like the coolest hairstyle. If you didn't straighten your hair, you were kind of weird.
Yeah. Or you're in the parent generation, because they've all got, like, feathering.
Yes.
There's another trend that has thankfully died a death, with these very intense highlights and, like...
Yes, like streaky highlights.
And choppy layers.
Yeah.
It's so early 2000s. Everybody looks like they're in the band Girls Aloud, which I realise is a UK phenomenon, but still. It was like... everybody looks really, really of that time. And the male fashion is, even early 2000s, there's people in kind of combat trousers and combat shorts. There's a lot of men wearing, like, neck jewellery that I feel has really faded out as a trend.
Yeah. That could just be California, though.
It might be. There's a lot of Abercrombie. I mean, we have to say that I feel like the OC propelled Abercrombie and Fitch, and then later these sort of teenage athleisure brands.
Yes.
Or Abercrombie and Fitch, and then Jack Wills. And this was like, when this was really a thing in the UK, I feel like it was because of the OC.
It's like, for the guys, you'd call it like preppy.
Preppy.
Yeah.
That's right, this preppy look. I think they even used that term in the OC.
Maybe.
That Marissa's whole vibe is preppy.
Yeah.
And that everything that they're wearing at Harbour, you could try and replicate that look if you were allowed to go to Abercrombie and Fitch, or like
spend all your money on, like,
it's impossible.
Jack Wells.
Like, no, but this was the irony, that nobody could shop at Abercrombie and Fitch because you had to be minuscule.
Yes.
And rich.
Yeah.
So I just, like, walked past and smelled the really, like, intense smelling perfume.
Oh my God, is it the era of, like, the shops you walked in, it was all, like, pitch black and you can't see the clothes because it was, like, everything was, like, in its own little kind of shelf, just one item of clothing, or, like, with a little one torch. And you're, like, in this place, you're like, am I in a clothes shop or a club? Like, I'm not quite sure.
That is entirely right, and it was a horror.
Yeah.
And I really hope it's dead now, or over as an era. I think the huge Abercrombie and Fitch store in London has closed down. I really hope it has. But you're right, it was this era of shopping that was torturous. I remember this being torturous because it was at a time period where, like, physically, I probably looked my worst ever. And, school had let us eat all those snacks. I was fat. It was terrible. And yet the aesthetic was to have Misha Barton's body type. And we should talk about this. This is the issue with the OC. We can't really go any further without talking about this. That this was the era of size 0.
Oh, yeah.
And in everything. Like, when you look at Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan, and it was the era of the shrinking celebrity body frame. And Misha Barton was, she had at that time what we can now look back and recognise was an almost just a really unusual physique. She's very tall. She's got an incredibly long body shape, and she is very thin in that show. And she gets thinner. And yet fashion was designed for this sort of unusual physique. Yeah. You had low-rise jeans. Do you remember that would like, so you had to have a really long torso and a flat stomach.
Yeah. If your stomach wasn't completely flat, you were kind of stuck with what to wear because as you said, like really, really low cut jeans just don't like flatter anyone who doesn't then have the flat stomach to show it off with a crop top.
No, exactly. And it doesn't help that it is California. So the people's bodies are front and centre in this show. You've got, we're talking about how Ryan Atwood doesn't look 17. He's got a 25-year-old's I go to the gym and have protein shakes body.
Yeah, true.
Like, he looks unnaturally built.
Yeah. At least maybe Seth and Summer look a bit more normal. I mean, Summer's like always made up quite a lot. She's quite like, she's obviously also very skinny and she has like her own fashion sense. And she often like is wearing like a whole load more makeup than I think most teenagers would. But I think Seth and Summer do come across as a bit more normal than the others.
Rachel Bilson, though, is struck by the shrinking body phenomenon in that show. Like, if you watch a random clip from season 1 and then you go to season 4,
there's a difference.
Yeah. She becomes really, really skinny. And the same as any show that spans that like early noughties period, or is particularly notable in Buffy, that starts in the wonderful, healthy 90s, where everybody looks so well. And then you get to the early 2000s and Sarah Michelle Gellar has shrunk to the point of looking, just having that real noughties skinny physique. But it meant for us as teenagers, I remember this being the era where people were really troubled by their body type.
Yeah,
school.
Because
this was
we didn't watch the OC at the time and think those people are really skinny.
No.
We watched it and thought that's what normal people are meant to look like.
Yeah, that's the aspiration. And that was absolutely solidified by the fact that you could not buy cool teenage clothing without being that physique.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't go to... Oh, right, I can look back on this now. What a nightmare this was. Like, going to Abercrombie and Fitch was a hellhole. It was awful. Like, you went in, you were confronted by what can only be described as models. You had this, like, club music blaring.
Yeah.
The whole thing, you would choke on the perfume. But, like, so you're almost in this, like, trance-like
And you
state.
weren't finding anything that was over a size 8.
No.
Which for Americans is the same as a US size 4.
2, I think it might even be a 2.
I think it's
tiny.
2 sizes different. So, yeah.
So small.
Yeah.
So small. And the OC even builds this into some of the dialogue. Like, Marissa is referred to as being a size 0.
Yes. This concept of size 0 was definitely around. And we all in the UK were like trying to work out, like,
how to be a size 0.
What's a size 0 in UK sizes? Oh, that's a size 4. Oh my goodness. And then suddenly you're at the point where you're thinking that a size 8 is like big.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
It's mad.
It is absolutely mad. I could not shop in that era for anything that was considered cool clothing. No. You were literally punished by what were meant to be cool clothing brands if you were not tiny.
Yeah.
And I this is the one thing I have to kind of lay at the OC's door, that for all of the wonderful joy and humour and like it genuinely was an awesome show, I'm pretty sure that caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
It was not responsible in the way that it treated that.
And I guess at the time there was no real concept of being responsible around that sort of stuff.
No.
Like, people didn't... That wasn't in, like, producers' language when they were thinking about making a show. They were just thinking about the aspiration of it all.
No, in fact, neither of these shows really treat that. Like, I'm amazed there wasn't a sustained anorexia storyline given to Misha Barton's character, or... Like, Gossip Girl sort of flirts with it for about an episode where it suggests that Blair has bulimia.
Right.
But then completely abandons it as something that it's willing to explore. I think because its cast are all tiny.
Yeah.
And it's still pushing that as the absolute sort of the physique to achieve. So that to me was something that has really aged the show.
Yeah.
But on a more positive note, we have to mention the OC's relationship with music.
Let's go there. Which was much more healthy.
Which was much more healthy.
I would say one of my biggest memories of the OC was as the episodes came out, like looking for the track listings, either at like the end of the episode on the credits, or like finding a early website that listed, you know, episode by episode. Like the website was just dedicated just to writing out all of the songs that were in each episode, so you could then go look them up. And I would make sure to get all these lists and then download each song individually off of, like, I guess it was like Apple Music or something, so I could have it on my iPod, like pay like 69 pence to buy this one and create my own little soundtrack of the OC. It's one of my, like, most fond memories of the show.
So I did not know how to do that because you knew how to use a computer and I didn't. So I went to HMV and desperately tried to buy the CD soundtrack.
They did sell soundtracks.
They did. They sold it almost per season.
But my problem was it didn't have every song from every episode.
Wow.
It just had, like, a selection of the biggest songs from the whole season. That was not good enough for me.
Yes, you're right. That's it. It had sort of like 14 songs, whereas there is great contemporary music in almost every episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, which is something Gossip Girl then continued. But the OC, we should say, like, launched bands.
Yeah.
And featured live
huge
music.
bands, yeah.
Yeah, like, when you do have Gossip Girl, you have celeb appearances by, like, Lady Gaga has a performance and stuff. But it felt like in the OC, the characters going to see bands was integrated into the drama in a way that it felt like they absolutely would go and see this band called Rooney, who were playing in this, like, tiny local music venue. And then it turns out that, like, Rooney becomes a really big band. Or, of course, they go and see the Killers.
Yeah.
Which is wild to look back at now when it's like the early years.
And it's hard to know now, like, how big they were and how much of, like, an impact that had, because it could go either way. Like, whether they were kind of, that gave them an extra boost, or whether they were on because they were already, like, just, like, at that right kind of up and coming moment. It was just right for them.
Yeah.
But it was awesome.
It's something that showed us so well, though, which is integrate music with, like, a teenage show. It's used so well in something like Twilight.
Yeah.
Like the fact that teenagers like bands.
Yeah, it's so realistic to the teenage experience.
Yeah.
That you would be wanting to go and see your favourite bands, and, like, that soundtrack ought to be part of your story.
Like, definitely. And this was something that had been done so well in Buffy, I thought, where they go to the Bronze and they watch, like, an awesome band, and that this was the setting for some sort of, there'd always be something emotional that happened at one of these gigs or something. And I thought, that's so true. It felt very accurate. But I like the OC for, before it becomes and morphs into sort of Gossip Girl, even though this is an aspirational slice of society that's like the uber wealthy people in the OC, it does still take place in their own homes, the school, the shopping mall, the beach, that the places they were felt like almost recognisable places.
Yeah, it's like, if I were transported into this life where I was uber wealthy and my parents had a pool house, I could see myself living my life like this.
Exactly. Whereas it's so difficult to get a foothold in the world of Gossip Girl when they're on helipads and, like, a bunch of them live in hotels.
Yeah, it's unrelatable, and it's unrelatable on purpose, whereas the OC was trying to be relatable, even with its wealth gap.
Brill. Okay, let's go to our categories. Ooh. The first one, we've dipped into this a little bit, is the thermometer level.
Yeah.
What are you, I mean, we'll explore it, but what are you inclined to give the OC?
Out of 100?
Out of 100.
I give it like a strong, like, 55.
Yeah, I'd give it a 60.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
We, like, fancied Seth Cohen, but I had a different reaction to him than some of the other people that we've discussed on this podcast. I liked him a normal amount.
It was like a healthy crush on a TV show character.
Yeah.
Which is not true of some of our other crushes, which were rather more unhealthy.
Yes. I had a healthy teenage crush on Seth Cohen.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Quite wholesome.
As I'm sure a lot of the population did. And you and I have a preference for the Seth Summer relationship.
Yeah.
We were just doing a bit of rewatching now. Like, I find Anna so frustrating because I see her as a blocker to the Seth Summer relationship.
Yes, yeah.
But some people really liked her. I feel bad for her character. That,
like, she wasn't a villain. She wasn't set up to be just
No.
in the way because she was a bad person or because she was trying to be. Yeah, she was all right.
And these shows love character pairings to be victorious for characters who are really different from one another. So if the show genuinely put people together who had similar interests and likes and dislikes, it would have been Anna and Seth.
Yeah.
That she was bookish, she's kind of academic, she loves emo music.
Yeah.
Although we've talked about how Seth is like a very early version of what we then would call emo.
More emotional
More like
emo
indie rock,
than,
yeah. Yeah, and they both like comic books. But the message of the show is that almost like that the heart wants what it wants, and he wants the like hot popular girl. So like, in the end.
But also that it's not like this was some like situation where the hot popular girl like really disliked him for seasons and seasons and then eventually realizes that the nerdy guy is okay.
No.
She liked him from pretty early on. Like they have a real close relationship that's really lovely.
And calling her the hot popular girl is actually to do the character of Summer an enormous disservice, because she's probably my favourite character after Seth. And she's almost as like the writers almost have to make Summer as witty, just to keep up with Seth.
Otherwise, the back and forth between them would just not work.
Yeah, they have real banter. They have a real repartee that really works, and I loved that they were together, which I think makes it like any of these shows. I love that Rachel Bilson and Anna Brady were together.
I feel like some people like the kind of on again, off again, like tumultuous relationships. But I think what worked about, and obviously Seth and Summer were on again, off again, but like in a way where it felt like, at least later on, that they were quite secure and you could just enjoy their relationship. I don't know. It felt more, wholesome.
They do go through the whole on again, off again thing because you can't get 4 seasons worth of drama out of it otherwise.
No, obviously.
But they manage to have a dynamic where, and maybe this is to the show's discredit, you can never fully buy into either of them having a relationship with anyone else. No, you just know that this person is a filler character until you get them together again. So it makes things like season 2 really hard watching, where Summer is with a guy whose name you see I've forgotten. Because I'm just
because it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You just think you're just a roadblock to Seth being with Summer. Come on. But their romance for me eclipses the Ryan and Marissa romance, but that's meant to be the Ryan and Marissa romance is meant to be the thing of the show. But just like Gossip Girl, the show is trying to suggest that the people who are the accurate pairing are the ones who are that you're going to have Dan and Serena be together in the end, which, some people think doesn't work. What did you think of, does the show ever really try and frustrate for you Sandy and Kirsten's relationship, or are they the absolute backbone of the show?
Sandy and Kirsten?
Yeah. Do you feel like they can do no wrong? Like they're meant to be together?
Yeah, of course.
It's a done deal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like they get their drama and their storylines, but they are the stable point of the family and the show. Absolutely.
Yeah, they are, which made for me, any time their relationship did come under threat, I really didn't like it. It made me feel very unsafe. Yeah. it was like that Sandy and Kirsten can't be having problems. Like they just can't. Like there's brief minor moments where Sandy, there's sort of mild infidelity storylines where there's kind of almost that we have Kirsten's alcoholism, and always through these I think no, please be okay again, please. It's as if I'm experiencing like them as my own parents in the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want them to be okay. So I can bear the drama of any of the teenagers like having relationship problems, but I can't bear it when it's Sandy and Kirsten. I can't bear it. The only person whose love life I could really get on board with following dramatically in the parent generation was Julie Cooper, who ends the show a far more likeable character than she starts off.
Yeah.
And that's a credit to Melinda Clark, who plays her, who's genuinely quite funny and quite likeable, and becomes the show almost a little bit like how the show realised in Gossip Girl that Chuck Bass was a way more likeable character.
Yeah,
he starts off that.
Yeah,
the same thing with Julie Cooper. They decide we have to rehabilitate this character because she's actually great.
Like her.
Yeah, 100%. Do you remember, or even like, I want to think about how the show dealt with sex, because it did. And this came out at a time when the characters start at like 16.
Yeah.
And we were all watching this at like 14 or 15. So the show knew that it had a responsibility and that it had a really young audience. Can you remember any of the... And if you can't, I'm going to go through it.
I can't remember the specific sex scenes, but I kind of remember, like, I remember it being in the kind of vibe of, like, quite romanticized and quite, like, I don't know, kind of...
This is Marissa and Ryan that you're remembering.
Yeah, like, quite, like, dramatic and passionate and...
They're in a beach hut.
Yeah, that kind of vibe. Whereas I think probably at the same time as this, we were probably watching things like Skins, where like I feel like the UK teenage shows treat sex in a completely opposite way, which is to just like
gross.
Make it gross and like funny and silly.
Yeah.
And like tell stupid jokes about it and be extremely explicit. But they're both kind of different sides of the same coin, where you're not like accurately portraying what 16-year-olds are doing.
And yet, by the same token, the treatment of Seth and Summer and when they have sex in season 1 is, I think, one of the most responsible things the show did.
Yeah.
So I'm going to blame it for its real issues around like body image and being too skinny. Like all of that, I can't get on board with. But when I always forget, and then when I watch it, it looks at the fact that they've built Seth and Summer up to be this like awesome pairing.
Yeah.
But they have crap sex.
Yeah.
They have sex like for the first time, and then they have this discussion about, well, that was rubbish.
What are we doing?
Yeah, and then they have like a series of discussions about this. So it isn't initially this romantic kind of Hollywood style. Lots of like, you know, hair blowing in the wind and everybody looks very airbrushed. The Ryan and Marissa, which is held back until season 3, sex scene is much more kind of idealized.
And do you think that's because they're older at that point? Or I think actually maybe it's saying something about those two different, like, what those two different relationships were trying to be.
Yeah.
Like, because Ryan and Marissa were meant to be the kind of the big romantic stars in a way, so they were put into that character, whereas Seth was kind of the funny one, and therefore they were allowed to have a more teenage relationship.
And I think it was that their storyline explored that first, which is also ironic. You would, not ironic, but just unusual. You would think it would be Marissa and Ryan, but it isn't. It is Seth and Summer. And I think the show just had to make a decision that it would have been out of character with either of them for this to have suddenly been some like airbrushed sort of scene.
No, that wouldn't have worked.
Like, two teenagers, one of which is Seth. Like there just wasn't going to be an accurate portrayal. So, but the way they do it, I think, is really actually one of the more iconic things about the show. But we should say this is not in any way. This is not an explicit show.
No.
In any way. I think this probably had about a 12, maximum 15 rating on it when it was put through the kind of UK system. And really the sort of moments when characters have chemistry is normally centred around some sort of slow-mo kiss. We were just rewatching the brilliant moment where Ryan runs in before New Year and it's all slow-mo and kisses Marissa.
And the music's playing over the top and
and that is Hollywood airbrushed sort of thing. Like all their kiss scenes are very mild and teenage and staged and kind of... I don't think there's a moment in the show where anyone really grabs someone else.
No,
like this doesn't have the like passion levels that some other programs had. And there's no explicit content in this show whatsoever. No. It very rarely actually goes into the kind of sex-based storylines.
Yeah, and if it does, it would be just in a kind of reference rather than...
Yeah, which is why I think we're not giving it above a 60. You're giving it a 55, I'm giving it a 60.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the OC badass?
No.
No.
I think we kind of covered this. It's that it has storylines that try to be, and sometimes they are serious, and sometimes they cover important issues, but it's not badass.
And yet, this is what we were saying before, it feels not badass because it's people in pool houses. And the things that I remember are like Seth and Ryan talking on Lilos.
Yeah.
And that Seth has Captain Oats.
Yeah.
And like Summer has Princess Spark. Oh my God, why do I remember the names of their ridiculous pet horses? But I do. But then when you recap kind of the key storyline moments, you have Marissa shoot Trey.
Yeah.
That's very violent. He's going to smash Ryan's head in with like an iron. Like,
but is it because the seasons are so long that there can still be extremely dramatic moments, and you need those extremely dramatic moments to sustain a long season and to keep it interesting even between seasons. But you have also enough time in between to have much more low stakes episodes and to build. And so the overall impression that you get from the OC is all the rest of it, and is that feeling of this is just a nice storyline with, you know, nice people around nice pool houses with some dramatic intercuts that thread it all together. But yeah, overall, even when it's covering those bigger things, it may have been thrilling, but it wasn't badass.
I think that's right. And that even in just like on an episode by episode basis, the one that we were just watching now is like the sort of dramatic or threatening thing is just, can Ryan run up the stairs in time?
Yeah.
Can he kiss Marissa before Oliver does?
Seth's aunt has thrown a particularly bad house party and ruined the house.
Haley's trashed the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you think, oh no, not their nice sofas.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. The really dramatic moments are balanced out, I think, by, okay, we skipped this in the thermometer category, but we have to talk about that Marissa briefly has a relationship with a girl, which is Olivia Wilde's character.
Yeah.
Who I think maybe that OC, it feels to me like the OC launched Olivia Wilde.
I can't think of what she would have done before.
Me neither. And I don't think her character extends past season 2. But that was an interesting choice.
And she is very sexy.
Oh, she's stunning.
Yeah.
I think they had to they didn't know what to do to offset like Misha Barton's beauty.
Yeah.
So they must have been casting about
find someone like really cool and sexy, not just like, hot and beautiful.
Yeah, like who can play against Misha Barton? I know, Olivia Wilde.
Yeah.
But I love that the show went there, because otherwise this did feel like a very, like, there wasn't much diversity in this show.
No.
Really, at all.
No.
And in fact, one of the only other relationship that is where somebody is not necessarily straight is treated in a negative way, which is when Luke finds out that his dad is gay,
right?
And that seemed to be that's treated as like it's a problem on the show. And I think the show very quickly needed to like rectify that and also put something in there that was positive, a positive depiction of like, and I used Marissa for it, which I thought was a real.
It's pretty bold.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, even now, it would be pretty bold.
No, I thought I'm really glad that it. Yes, it would. I'm really glad that it went there, and I can't think of another prime time teen drama. I remember how much of a big deal it was when Willow and Tara's relationship was, and that was the first.
Loved that.
Me too. That was the first girl on girl kiss, I think, on television at the time. But the OC must have been pretty close. That's not that much later. So this was a big deal at the time.
Absolutely.
And we skipped that in the thermometer character, but that's pretty badass of the show.
That is pretty badass of the show. Yeah.
So that was cool. All right. Obsession fuel. How much mania did A, this show create, and B, how much obsession fuel was there in the tank for us to get like really into it?
I think the mania was huge. So there was definitely something there. It was absolutely massive. And as I said, I managed to spend my time looking up all of the music and getting really into Imogen Heap and, whatever. But I mean, actual obsession fuel, like content and like stuff that you could really dig into is pretty low. It's going to be like an eighth of a tank or something. Like you can keep rewatching the show. And that's probably the way in which we, like, you know, fueled our obsession. But there's not, like, much other stuff to go away and, like, really get deep into.
No, this is where it sits in a different kind of place from our fantasy obsessions, or even we talked last week about how full the obsession tank was when we were into, like, emo.
Yeah.
And bands and merch and all this sort of stuff. With the OC, apart from feeling desperately bad about yourself that you could not wear their clothes, there wasn't, and it's not a fantasy show, so there's no mythology and mystery languages, and
it's not like we were ever realistically going to go and, like, be able to visit the OC, and, like, you know, it wasn't that kind of show.
Nope.
So
still haven't been to California. It looks great, but it was a bit far away. But, I mean, the most complex that it got was trying to explain to a new viewer perhaps the family tree of one of these people, or their intricate family drama. Like, okay, so, you know, Marissa Cooper's mom is now married to the dad of Kirsten. So you maybe drew out for somebody a complex family tree, but that was about it.
And maybe we might have, like, ripped out the odd poster from a teen magazine of, and put them on our wall, but that was probably about it.
Yeah, but the mania at the time was huge. This was defining music. It kind of defined what teen culture looked like-ish for that very, very specific 3 or 4 years in the mid-noughties. And just the one takeaway thing from it that still blows my mind is that Adam Brody has married Leighton Meester. I can't get past this. I love it. It makes
crazy.
me so happy. It's like the crossover of like, whenever I see them together, I have to do a double take because my mind can't compute that Seth from the OC is married
in the same world
to Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl. And I have to do a double take because Blair Waldorf Leighton Meester is in a similar kind of mould to Rachel Bilson.
Yeah, they're quite similar looking.
Yeah, they're the petite brunette who plays against the taller character, which is Blake Lively's character in Gossip Girl and is Misha Barton in the OC. So it is literally like, I mean, no offense, Adam Brody, but you clearly have type. It wasn't too much of a change. But yeah, I love that, and that the cast now are, like, still very beloved and famous in their own right, and sometimes do little appearances on other shows. Or, you know, Rachel Bilson, to her credit, had a really good show after the OC, which was The Heart of Dixie.
Oh yeah, of course.
I really enjoyed.
I never watched it.
So, like, and I think Ben McKenzie did some, like, police drama. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this was probably, I think, the best work that any of that cast actually did.
Yeah, I agree.
And are still iconic for it. Like, if the best work you did was the OC, I kind of feel like that's okay.
That's all right.
This was such a defining moment. So we will do, in our upcoming episodes, maybe some more serialised TV programmes that we adored, but this was an absolutely massive one at the time. You've been listening to the Fangirl Diaries. Follow us on Instagram at Fangirl Diaries Pod.
And do share us with any of your friends that you think might enjoy the podcast, and rate or review us on Spotify or Apple Music.